They grounded her years ago. Said her jet was obsolete. But when a SEAL team was trapped with no way out, only one pilot dared to fly the canyon, and her battle-scarred warthog roared back to life. The desert was burning. Not with fire, but with tension, the kind that presses on your chest like a second heartbeat. Captain Jack Mason crouched behind the crumbling wall of a half-destroyed compound, sweat stinging his eyes, sand in his throat, blood on his shoulder. A bullet had grazed him 20 minutes ago, and he hadn't had time to bandage it. Too many shooters, too little cover, and too damn far from the extraction point. His SEAL team was down to 4. They were holed up in the jagged choke of Al-Majid Canyon, a deep, narrow trench where signals died and death lived comfortably. Any chance that bird's inbound? Mace grunted into the comms. Static. Then a crackling reply from base. Still working air support. Stand by. He laughed once, bitterly. Still working it, huh? He ducked as another burst of gunfire shredded a corner of the wall above him. Dust exploded in his face. Across from him, Petty Officer Rodriguez returned fire, yelling something in Spanish that didn't need translation. Mace keyed the mic again. If you've got anything with wings and ammo, now would be a good time. Back at Bagram Air Base, the Situation Room was a hive of quiet panic. Faces glowed under map screens and flickering satellite feeds. The canyon's walls were too steep for fast movers, and Apache gunships couldn't get in without announcing themselves a mile out. Colonel Robert Lancaster stared at the digital terrain model on the screen. There's no clean way in. Not with that anti-air nest on the ridge. An intel officer pointed out the kill zone radius. They've zeroed it in. Anything above 100 feet gets lit up. A younger air controller chimed in. What about an A-10? She's built for this kind of close air support. Lancaster gave him a hard look. You want to feed a warthog into a canyon with nowhere to turn and heat seekers on every rock? The damn thing flies like a flying barn. The controller hesitated. Well, it can take a beating. Not that much of a beating. Lancaster turned away. Too slow. Too wide. It's suicide. From the corner of the room, a voice spoke up, level, calm, and unmistakably female. It's not suicide if you know the canyon. Heads turned. Major Dana Riley stepped forward, helmet under her arm, flight suit crisp despite the heat. Her expression was unreadable, not arrogance, not emotionless, just a quiet certainty. Lancaster blinked. Riley? You're not even in rotation. No, she said. I wasn't. Until 10 minutes ago. Someone whispered, that's the Cold War flyer, isn't she? Terrain napper. Lancaster sighed. We need a strike package, not nostalgia. This isn't the 80s. Dana didn't flinch. I've run drills in terrain tighter than Al-Majid. I can get low, stay fast, and hit those guns. Low? Mace's voice came through the speaker from the canyon, barely audible under gunfire. Define low, ma'am. Dana stepped to the comms panel. Close enough that you'll taste the GAU-8. The room fell silent. Outside the hangar, the afternoon sun baked the tarmac. Dana stood beside her bird, an old A-10C Thunderbolt II, nicknamed Widow 9, its shark mouth paint job faded but still menacing. Her crew chief, Tech Sergeant Eli Novak, was already under the wing, running diagnostics. You serious about this? He muttered, wiping grease off his hands. This canyon's no joke. Dana ran her hand along the armor plating. Neither am I. Eli smirked, then frowned. They think you're crazy. They always do, she replied. Until they need something impossible. Back in the war room, arguments flared again. You can't just greenlight her because she thinks she can do it. She flew Napa Earth and red flag drills before half the people in this room had their first deployment. She hasn't flown combat in 6 years. Lancaster raised his hand. Silence fell. He looked at the satellite feed again. The SEALs were boxed in. Time was running out. No other options on the board. Finally, he pressed the comm button. "Major Riley," he said slowly. "This isn't a cowboy run. You are not authorized to take unnecessary risk." Dana's voice came back like steel. "Understood, sir. But this is necessary." In the canyon, Mace looked up at the sky. He could hear enemy voices in the distance, shifting positions, closing in. He tapped his comms one more time. "Whoever's coming, do it fast. Because we've got about 10 minutes before we're all just names in a debrief." At Bagram, Dana climbed into the cockpit. The engines whined to life. Her fingers moved over the controls like muscle memory. She could feel the jet breathing beneath her, not a machine, not quite. Something more. As the canopy closed over her, she whispered, "Let's go show them what low really means." Colonel Robert Lancaster watched from the control tower as the A-10 taxied across the shimmering tarmac. Dust curled behind its wide wheels. The Warthog looked ugly. Too slow, too loud, too old. Just like its pilot. He turned away from the window and muttered, "She won't make it out of that canyon." Behind him, Captain Naomi Parks, a young intelligence officer barely out of Annapolis, cleared her throat. "With respect, sir, Major Riley's terrain mapping scores are still the highest ever recorded in Red Flag," she said, tapping her tablet. She trained in Napa Earth flying during Cold War-era joint ops. Her file's incredible. Lancaster didn't even look at the screen. "Those were exercises, Lieutenant. She hasn't flown combat in years. There's a difference between hitting virtual targets in Nevada and flying into a meat grinder with real bullets. You don't see the difference, that's your youth talking." Parks held her ground. "Sir, with greater respect, this mission doesn't have any other option." Lancaster exhaled hard. He'd already lost one pilot today. Lieutenant Marston had volunteered for a high recon sweep, and they'd watched his F-16 vanish in a burst of light on the ridge. The kid never had a chance. Burned up before he could even hit the eject. Now this. Now Dana Riley. "She's not even on the active rotation," Lancaster snapped. "Hell, she wasn't even cleared for combat last month." "She updated her quals last week," Parks said, handing him a hard copy. Lancaster read the first line. "Passed. Max score. Efficient. No wasted motion. Just like Riley always had been." He handed the paper back without a word. In the hangar, Dana climbed out of Widow 9 after her systems check and found Tech Sergeant Novak waiting with a patch kit, scowling. "You sure about this?" he asked, voice low. "I've never been unsure," she said simply. He looked at her, really looked this time. Dana had lines around her eyes now. Small ones. Her hair was pulled back tighter than regulation. Her flight suit was clean, but worn in all the right places. Not a hotshot. Not a glory chaser. But something steadier. "You know what they say, right?" Novak muttered. "About Al-Majid Canyon?" Dana raised an eyebrow. "They say even the Reapers don't fly in there anymore. Enemies locked it down. Even birds don't go that low." Dana gave a small nod, then opened her A-10's side panel and pulled out a small tin, dented, scratched, and old. She flipped it open. Inside was a neatly folded map of the Al-Majid region, hand-annotated. Novak blinked. "You've been studying it?" "Since last week." "I had a feeling." "Why?" he asked. Dana looked him dead in the eye. "Because when everything else fails, they always come back to the Warthog." Back in the Situation Room, SEAL Team audio fed into the speakers. 2 men hit. 1 critical. "We're nearly dry on ammo." "Where the hell is that air support?" Lancaster folded his arms. "She's not even in the air yet." Captain Mace's voice crackled in response. "Then tell her to go back to base. This isn't a training flight. If she doesn't make it through, we're done." Dana's voice cut in calmly from her cockpit. "Copy that, Captain." "I won't miss." A brief silence. May scoffed. Big words. Bigger guns, she said. Someone in the room chuckled nervously. But Lancaster didn't smile. He walked over to the mic and leaned in. You're flying into a kill box, Major. Anti-aircraft on both ridgelines. The canyon winds tighten 3 miles in. If you go too fast, you'll pancake. Too slow, you'll stall. I know, Dana replied. No one's made it through. Not even drones. I'm not a drone. Apparently not, Lancaster muttered. He glanced again at Naomi Parks. She held her breath, waiting. He hit the mic one last time. This is your call, Major. But if this goes south, I'll have to explain to Washington why I let a desk pilot take the shot. Dana's voice came through steady, then tell them I volunteered. On the edge of the airstrip, a younger pilot stood watching Widow 9 spin up. Lieutenant Ryan Kepler, 27, tall, confident, fast-tracked. He chewed his gum a little too loudly as he spoke to Novak. She's really going in there, he asked, half impressed, half amused. Novak didn't answer. Kepler shook his head. She's brave. Or stupid. That canyon eats jets like snacks. You volunteering? Novak asked dryly. Kepler shrugged. If she goes down, I'll fly it. Got the hands for it. Novak finally looked up from the panel. No offense, kid. But your hands have only seen sim controls. Hers have handled actual fire. Kepler scoffed. She's past her prime. From behind them, Dana walked up, helmet under her arm. She had heard every word. She stopped beside Kepler. Tell you what, Lieutenant. If I don't come back, you're cleared to take my locker. It's got flight logs older than your flight school. Kepler went red. Yes, ma'am. Inside the cockpit, Dana's fingers danced over the controls. Oxygen check. Avionics check. Weapons green. Radar warning lit, already picking up noise from the ridge. She glanced at the photo tucked into the dashboard, a black and white shot of her and her former squadron, taken 15 years ago. They were all gone now. Retired. Dead. Moved on. But she was still here. Not because she hadn't tried to leave. Because they hadn't let her finish. Not yet. At the control tower, Parks looked to Lancaster one more time. Sir. You're not going to stop her? Lancaster shook his head. She's already gone. The engines of Widow 9 screamed as Dana rolled forward. The Warthog's massive cannon sat like a fist under her nose. She lifted off smoothly, no fancy moves, no radio chatter. Just a clean ascent, nose pointed south, toward the kill zone. She knew the route. She'd memorized it. Mapped it in her head. Low. Then lower. She'd flown closer to treetops than most pilots dared. But this time it wasn't just for score sheets or simulated targets. This time, people were waiting. And dying. She clicked the intercom once. Widow 9 en route. ETA 5 minutes. In the canyon, May stuck behind another rock, dragging Rodriguez with him. The bullets never stopped. Whoever that is, he muttered, she'd better be a damn miracle. Before she was Major Dana Riley, the woman flying into a death trap canyon in an old A-10, she was just Lieutenant Riley, one of the first female pilots in her squadron. No fanfare. No speeches. Just long hours, unheated hangars, and men who assumed she was there to file reports. They were wrong. Dana flew like she was born to it. Not with swagger, she hated showboats, but with precision. Her instructors didn't praise her in front of the others, but after hours, one or two would find her alone and say things like, "You don't just control the jet, Riley. You talk to it." She listened to the aircraft the way others listen to music, feel first, logic after. When the simulator maps changed daily, she memorized them within hours. When other pilots struggled to balance speed and altitude, Dana hugged the terrain like water clinging to stone. She flew terrain-hugging exercises during red flag in 08, 09, and 10, even flew manual in full blackout conditions when digital systems failed. One time, she got through a mock mountain range with no radar, no GPS, and a damaged altimeter. Came out clean. Her call sign back then? Shadow Glide. Because when she flew, you didn't hear her until she'd passed you. But skill wasn't everything. Politics lived in the hangar too. Her squadron CO, Colonel Dane Maddox, didn't like her. Not because she was bad, but because she was better. Quieter. Sharper. She didn't kiss up, didn't play the drinking games, didn't join the locker room gossip. And one day, that cost her. 2013, Helmand Province. A convoy was ambushed on a narrow mountain pass. Weather was closing in. Air support was scrambled. Dana was in the second flight, following Maddox, who led the attack run. Only Maddox misread the wind shear and overshot the target zone by 2 clicks. The convoy took a second hit from enemy fire. 3 Marines died. Dana had it on her feed. She watched it in real time, the missiles striking the wrong ridge. Saw Maddox panic and pull out, leaving the rest of the target incomplete. When they landed, Dana filed a clean, professional report. She listed everything: weather conditions, coordinates, damage assessments, and the timing of the munitions. A week later, she was reassigned. Command rotation, they called it. Cross-training. But everyone knew. Maddox had friends. Friends who didn't want his career bloodied by a subordinate's truth. She spent the next 6 years bouncing between support roles, ops planning, simulator instruction, flight readiness coordination. Important work, on paper. But never combat. Never back in the seat that mattered. Dana didn't complain. She kept flying in the sim. Kept her scores sharp. Stayed quiet. Watched younger, louder pilots get their shot. Some made it. Some flamed out. Some crashed. None flew like she did. The A-10 community remembered, though. The old crew chiefs. The instructors. The people who didn't forget. And one of them was Tech Sergeant Novak. 2 weeks ago, she was called to help run a terrain mapping exercise for drone operators. Just another quiet job. Just another screen in a room with bad coffee. Afterward, Novak had found her in the hangar, staring at Widow 9, hands folded behind her back. "You think she still flies?" he asked. Dana hadn't answered at first. She just ran a gloved hand along the cannon mount, eyes soft. Then she said, "I know she does. I just wonder if they'll ever let me again." Back in the present, as Dana cruised at altitude en route to the canyon, she thought about those years. Not with bitterness. Not even regret. Just quiet memory. She adjusted her throttle. Wind resistance rising. The ridgeline ahead loomed like a knife's edge. Widow 9 to command, she radioed. Crossing waypoint Alpha. Beginning descent. Back in the war room, Lieutenant Naomi Parks heard her voice and stepped aside, scrolling Dana's record again. No fanfare. No medals of honor. But line after line of perfect flight ratings, 0 incident reports, and exemplary evaluations, all buried behind newer names. She turned to Colonel Lancaster. "Sir, I think we've all made a mistake." Lancaster didn't reply. He just watched the screen, where Dana's signal dropped below radar. She was going dark. Exactly like she'd trained for. In the canyon, Captain Mace's team was almost out of time. 2 wounded. Ammo down to a few mags. Every few seconds, they could hear movement, enemy footfalls getting closer, echoing off the rock. Rodriguez coughed hard. His shoulder was soaked in blood. Mace looked up at the sky. Nothing. No rotor blades. No missile trails. Just heat and silence. "Any update on air support?" he hissed into the mic. Crackle. Then, from far overhead, a voice. "This is Widow 9. 2 minutes out. Mace frowned. Thought they grounded the warthogs. Another voice, younger, probably Novak, came through with a smile behind it. Not this one. Dust clung to every breath. Captain Jack Mace Mason wiped blood from his cheek and counted 3 grenades, 6 magazines, 2 working radios, and 1 man already unconscious. Petty Officer Reyes had taken shrapnel to the chest, breathing shallow, barely responsive. Mace glanced toward the sun. It was dipping low behind the canyon rim, casting the narrow pass into shadow. That was bad. Night meant colder air, and colder air made the enemy's infrared scope sharper. "Boss," Rodriguez said, crouched beside a rock, "they're shifting again." "Sounds like they're flanking." Mace nodded. "Same side?" "Both sides. 2 groups, at least. No way out. No air support yet. No miracles." Mace dropped behind cover, keyed his comm. "Command, this is Alpha Actual. We are surrounded. We have 1 critical, 1 out of ammo. Requesting confirmation on incoming support." The reply came with a long pause and static. "Widow 9 is en route." Mace narrowed his eyes. What the hell is a Widow 9? Before anyone could answer, another shot cracked, dust exploded inches from his boot. He dove back, barely missing the round. Rodriguez fired back, emptying his mag. "I don't care if it's a drone or a dragon. If it's not here in 5, we're dead." At Bagram, the base was almost unnaturally quiet. Outside the operations building, the whine of a single pair of turbofans rose above the desert wind. Major Dana Riley sat inside Widow 9, her A-10 Thunderbolt II, already mid-taxi. Systems green. Ammo loaded. Map burned into memory. She didn't speak. Didn't need to. In the seat beside the runway, Tech Sergeant Novak sat with a headset on, watching. "Everyone's watching," he said over the radio, voice low. Dana responded without looking. "Then they'll see how it's done." Inside the ops center, Lancaster stood over the shoulder of a flight controller. "Has she gone dark yet?" "Yes, sir. Radar contact lost. Terrain masking engaged." Park stepped beside him, arms crossed tightly. "She's entering the drop corridor. This is where every other aircraft failed." Lancaster nodded. "Yeah." He didn't say what they were all thinking. This is where she dies. Above the canyon, Dana pulled back slightly on the throttle. Her HUD flickered, adjusting for terrain shadow. The system tried to offer warnings, altitude too low, proximity alert, but she disabled all of it. She didn't need noise. She needed feel. The canyon ahead looked like a scar torn into the planet, narrow, jagged, no exit on either side. She adjusted trim. This was her world now. Down below, Mace dragged Reyes behind a stone shelf. His breathing was faint. Too faint. Rodriguez was down to a pistol. Another SEAL, Parker, was reloading with trembling fingers. Bullets pinged off the rocks around them. The enemy was getting bold, moving in closer, confident no airstrike was coming. "We can't hold another push," Parker muttered. "They're toying with us." Mace scanned the sky again. Nothing but heat shimmer. Then, a low vibration in the rocks beneath his boots. Faint. Almost like thunder. No, not thunder. Engines. Mace grabbed his radio. "Command, confirm. Is that your bird?" Dana's voice crackled in over the canyon's comms. "Widow 9 inbound. Weapons hot." From the ridgeline, enemy gunners turned upward. One lifted a shoulder-launched SAM. They were ready for her. But Dana didn't come from above. She slid in from below, hugging the terrain so tightly her wings nearly scraped rock. Her A-10 roared through the canyon like a bullet down a steel pipe. In the operations center, Parks leaned forward. "She's in." Lancaster just stared at the map, a single, flickering signal cutting through red enemy positions like a scalpel. "She's insane," he whispered. In the canyon, Mace dropped his radio. "That's not a jet," he muttered. "That's a damn earthquake." Then they saw it. A streak of gray and gunmetal, sharp teeth on the nose, cannon gleaming in the sun. The warthog whipped around the bend like it had grown wings made of anger. And then it spoke. The GAU-8/A Avenger cannon opened up, a 30mm growl that shook the stone and obliterated the enemy gun nest in seconds. Muzzle flashes blinked like lightning. Dirt exploded from the ridge. One shot. Two. Then three. The mountain answered in silence. Half the enemy force vanished in fire and steel. Rodriguez dropped his weapon, eyes wide. She flew under them. Who the hell flies under? Mace stood, stunned. She's not flying for medals, he said. She's flying to get us out. Inside Widow 9, Dana rolled left, wingtip just feet from a cliff wall. Alarms screamed. She ignored them. She wasn't here to fly safe. She was here to finish. Target 1 neutralized, she said calmly. Repositioning for Ridge Pass 2. Back at base, Lancaster turned to Parks. How long until she's out of fuel? Parks checked. She's got 15 minutes. That's all. Lancaster nodded slowly. Then she has 15 minutes to be a legend. The roar of the A-10's engines echoed like thunder as Dana Riley plunged into the canyon. Below, the winding ravine was a death trap, jagged rock walls barely wide enough for her wingspan, surface to her missiles tracking heat, and enemy gunners who had spent weeks preparing for this moment. But Dana wasn't new to tight corners or impossible odds. She lowered her visor, heart steady. Ghost Rider 1 entering kill box. 30 seconds to visual. Over the comms, static crackled before Captain Mace's strained voice came through. Whoever you are, this place is suicide. We're boxed in under that ridgeline. They've got launchers on both sides. I know, Dana replied. Just stay down. I'll give you a window. She tilted the A-10 downward. The walls of the canyon surged up on either side, brown and red like gnarled teeth. A lesser pilot would have panicked. But Dana's eyes moved with mechanical calm. Left bluff, 70 meters, right wall, 55 meters. Wind crossflow, minor. Her fingers danced on the controls, adjusting flaps, throttle, trim. The A-10 dipped so low the shadow of her wings brushed the canyon floor. The altimeter screamed a warning. Altitude too low. Override, she muttered. The first rocket lanced from the cliff to her right. Chaff burst from her rear like silver pollen, and she banked hard left, the edge of her right wingtip scraping dust from the canyon wall. Another missile locked. Her countermeasures flared. One false twitch, and it was over. Dana's voice was calm, as if narrating a grocery list. 2 launchers active. Returning fire. She squeezed the GAU-8 trigger. The cannon erupted with its thunderous roar, a deep, grinding mechanical growl that rattled her teeth and shook the canyon walls. Tungsten rounds ripped across the ridgeline, obliterating the launcher and the enemy crew behind it. Down below, the SEALs crouched in a bombed-out irrigation trench. Dust rained down around them as a second launcher exploded across the canyon. She's flying below the cliffs. Mace shouted. Who the hell is that? Legend, one of his team whispered, stunned. But Dana wasn't listening. Her HUD flickered red again. 3 more launchers had powered on ahead. The canyon narrowed further, this section barely wide enough for a wingspan. No room to bank. No room to climb. She had to go through. Her jaw tightened. In her head, she heard her old instructor's voice. No matter the jet, the wings are only as wide as your will to fly it. Dana whispered, let's finish it. She switched to manual countermeasures and punched flares early, drawing the first missile off course. But the second was smarter. It tracked her through the heat blooms, homing in on her tailpipe. No tricks left. So she dropped her altitude another 10 feet. Skimming the canyon floor, she pulled her nose up slightly, Just enough to clear a rock outcrop, then released a short burst of cannon fire. The sheer force of her rounds shattered the final launcher before it could fire. Then came silence. Just her jet's howl, echoing off canyon walls. Above, the SEALs stood, blinking at the sudden quiet. "Area clear," Dana confirmed, voice flat. The canyon behind her was a ribbon of fire and falling stone. Mace stared through his monocular. She flew under them. Through all of it. One of his teammates muttered, "That's not flying. That's something else." Dana circled once and dropped a green smoke marker for evac. "Extraction team en route. You boys still breathing?" Mace chuckled, adrenaline still coursing. "Barely. Thanks to you." She didn't respond with a joke or even a thank you. She just exhaled. "Copy. RTB." But back at base, they were far from silent. In the command center, the live feed from Dana's gun camera had played like a war movie. Officers who had doubted her stood frozen. Colonel Lancaster gripped the edge of the table with white knuckles. She'd flown lower than any recorded A-10 mission in the past 2 decades. No AI flight sim had predicted survivability in that canyon run. None of the younger pilots would have dared try. Lancaster cleared his throat, trying to mask the emotion rising in his chest. She did it. Naomi Parks smiled tightly beside him. "Told you she could." When Dana landed, the runway shimmered under the afternoon heat. She taxied the A-10 back to the hangar, popped the canopy, and climbed down without flourish. Her flight suit was soaked through, her knuckles bruised from gripping the stick. And yet she looked calm. As if she'd just completed a routine drill. Naomi was waiting. That was. Dana waved her off gently. "It's done." From the other end of the tarmac, applause broke out. Not loud. Not thunderous. But honest. Mechanics. Ground crews. A few pilots. People who knew what it meant to do what she just did. She paused. For a long second, Dana simply looked at them, then nodded once. It was the most emotion she'd shown since takeoff. Behind her, the A-10 stood like a dragon, soot-scored, battle-hardened, majestic. And above, the canyon she'd just flown through still echoed with the ghosts of impossibility. The sun was dipping low when Dana finally walked out of the debriefing room. She had sat through nearly an hour of stunned silence, followed by a barrage of questions from commanders and analysts who couldn't wrap their heads around what she'd pulled off. The flight recorder, the gun cam footage, the terrain scans, all confirmed the same impossible thing. Dana Riley had flown the A-10 into a canyon rigged for slaughter and come out the other side untouched, and with a SEAL team still breathing. Now, outside the headquarters building, the base was quieter. A few pilots jogged toward the mess. Technicians wheeled carts across the tarmac. No fanfare, no parade. Just the evening air and the faint smell of burnt jet fuel. Naomi Parks waited on a bench near the flight line, arms crossed, eyes locked on Dana's slow approach. She stood as Dana reached her. "They wanted to give you a medal already," Naomi said, her voice dry. "Told them to let you breathe first." Dana smiled faintly. "Thanks." There was a long pause before Naomi added, more softly, "I watched the footage, Dana. All of it. You didn't just fly that jet, you bent physics." Dana looked down at her boots. "I just did what needed doing." Naomi stepped closer, voice steady now. "No. You reminded this place who taught the younger pilots what courage looks like. You reminded me." Dana's jaw tightened. "I wasn't supposed to be the one flying. I wasn't even supposed to be here. And yet, you were the only one who could have done it," Naomi replied. "Don't downplay that." For a moment, Dana looked past her, to the hangar, where the A-10 sat parked. Its fuselage was still scorched from the canyon run, but the crews were already patching it up like a sacred relic. She could see young airmen watching it with awe. Whispering about her. The old jet and the forgotten pilot who flew it like a blade through stone. Naomi broke the silence again. Colonel Lancaster saw the full feed. He asked me something I thought I'd never hear. Dana raised an eyebrow. He asked if you'd consider training the next class of close air support pilots. Officially. Dana blinked, stunned. For real, she asked, incredulous. Naomi nodded. Full clearance. No more instructor sidelining. No more ghosts. You're back on the books. He even suggested naming the new wing after you. Dana let out a dry laugh. That's a little dramatic. Naomi chuckled. So is what you did. The two women stood there for a moment longer, just two veterans, breathing in the weight of years that had finally lifted. From behind them, the rumble of a Humvee broke the stillness. It pulled up near the hangar, and out stepped Captain Mace, still covered in desert grime, his team behind him. He walked straight up to Dana. Didn't salute. Didn't bark thanks. He just looked her in the eye. You're Dana Riley? She nodded. You saved 6 of my brothers. One of them had a kid born last week. Another was about to retire. Mace paused. His voice dropped. We were gone, ma'am. We knew it. Then your jet came down that canyon like the hand of God. Dana looked away, trying to hide the emotion rising. Mace reached into his pocket and held something out. It was a battered Navy SEAL challenge coin, scratched, scuffed, engraved with the unit's call sign and motto. I've only given one of these away. This one's yours, if you'll take it. Dana stared at it for a long beat. Then she nodded slowly, closing her fingers around it. I'll guard it with my life, she said quietly. You already did, Mace replied, and turned to go. Naomi, watching nearby, smiled. Later that night, Dana sat alone at the far end of the base canteen. The room was mostly empty, save for a few pilots playing cards and a lone radio playing some old blues song from decades past. In front of her sat a tray with untouched food and a cup of coffee gone cold. Across the room, a pair of young lieutenants peeked her way, whispering. She smiled at them. Not cocky, just at peace. She pulled something from her pocket. Not the challenge coin. Not her flight credentials. A photo. It was faded at the edges. A younger Dana, back when she first qualified on the Warthog. Smiling, cocky, holding her helmet high. Next to her in the photo stood an older woman in uniform, her mother. Dana whispered to it, just loud enough for the table to hear, told you I'd come back. Outside, night rolled in over the desert. The hangar lights dimmed. But inside, Dana Riley, pilot, ghost, legend, sat in the warm hum of her second beginning. She was no longer the woman who'd been benched, forgotten, or doubted. She was the one who flew the canyon. And the whole base, from boots to brass, would never forget it. Thank you for tuning in, Dana Riley's story. If her flight moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell us what you'd do in her cockpit in the comments below. Until next time, stay low, fly proud.